Hi, everybody. Beatle Dave, your friendly local neighbourhood record collector, calling to you from Derby in the United Kingdom. I hope everybody's well and dandy out there in YouTube land and record collectors and Beatles collectors around the world. As this video says, 12 albums that you think should be in a record collection. Now, in my case, I can't add any Beatles records. And obviously, depending on how old you are and where you live, the 12 albums that you think should be in somebody's collection is going to vary. Obviously, if he was born in the 80s, you might want Duran Duran and, things like that in your collection. If he was born in the 1940s, you're going to want things like Elvis Presley and maybe even Frank Sinatra and things like that. So this is like 12 albums, I think, are ideal for my collection, but may not be ideal for your collection out there. As I've said, as I'm a Beatles fan, I've not added or included any Beatles albums in this, which has made it even harder. And like I say, depending on how old you are, where you live, this is going to be harder for you to decide as well. Like I say, these are just my 12 that I've decided on. It's not a tag or anything. I just thought this would be quite a good one for you to play at home and see what your 12 ideal record to be. But like, if you're a Beatles fan, you can't have no Beatles in it, and if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, you can't have no Led Zeppelin. Or if you're Madness, you can't have no Madness and stuff like that. Beatle Dave's why I haven't done any Beatles. Also, although it's 12 records, it's going to be 13 because one is a guilty pleasure that's going to come up right at the end that people probably wouldn't think would be in my collection or wouldn't think it'd be in your collection if you're playing this. So I don't expect everybody to agree with all of my choices. Like I've said, everybody is different. These are just some of mine, and I've just done it basically for a little bit of fun, because you've been starved of a video for over a week, haven't you? So, as I've said, Beatle Dave, welcome to everybody. Everybody's welcome to my little channel today. This video is just a little bit of fun, so don't take it too serious. Right, the first record that I've picked is a David Bowie LP, which won't come as any surprise to most people because I do quite like David Bowie, and it's probably his most well-known album in a lot of ways, and the one that kicked him off to stardom worldwide. And it's Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Originally came out in 1972. This is an original copy on the RCA Victor label. I'm not going to bother getting it out and things like that. You should all know the tracks on it, but there's some fantastic songs on this anyway. 5 Years, Soul Love, Moon Age Daydream, what a fantastic song. How that was never a single in the UK, I will never, ever know. It should have been. Starman, again, that was a massive hit. But, they could have had both, really, couldn't they? It Ain't Easy, Lady Stardust, Star, Hang On To Yourself. Ziggy Stardust, again, was never officially a single in the UK. Suffragette City and Rock and Roll Suicide. First sort of like glam rock sort of album that David Bowie released. Fantastic album, not a bad track on it. I would give it a 10 out of 10. And I love having this in my collection. I've got a couple of copies of this, by the way, but I just thought I'd share this one. By the way, you can have compilation albums in this if you want to. If it makes it easier, you can put the odd compilation album in it. Now, this isn't in any particular order. I'm not saying this is number one, this is the best one. This is just 12 that, I think people of my age, should I say, should or probably will have most of these in the collection to some degree. The next one technically is a compilation album, but depending on where you live in the world, this one's even officially ever released in the UK. It's the Rolling Stones and it's Flowers, the Flowers album. Great track listing on it. Quite hard to come by. Although it was never released in the UK officially, you can get a UK export copy of it, which is a bit strange. And it's basically the best of the Rolling Stones, sort of like early to mid 60s. So you've got Ruby Tuesday, Have You Seen Your Mother, Stand in the Shadows, Let's Spend the Night Together, Lady Jane, Out of Time, My Girl, which seems out of place on this album, to be honest, Backstreet Girl, Please Go Home, Mother's Little Helper, fantastic song. Take It or Leave It, again, brilliant song. Ride On Baby and Sitting on a Fence. This is a German copy. Again, I've had this probably about a year. Didn't pay a lot for it because it's got water damage, but the record itself is in amazing condition. So that's the second one of my 12. Don't forget, there's the Guilty Pleasure one right at the end. I'm not sure. I think this is in the new mono box set, or a version of this is. Cracking album, to be honest. Always surprised it was never released in the UK. Well, I'm not. You know, look at the Beatles export albums. You know, the UK export albums were never released in the UK. The next one is by one of my favourite bands other than the Beatles, which is The Move. And it is their first LP, simply called The Move. This was featured on a recent video from a few weeks ago, so I won't go into much detail. This is original UK first pressing on Regal Zonophone. Quite hard to come by. These are quite hard to come by, and they are worth, you know, quite a lot of money. I was quite lucky. I got this for bargain price, but that is not a reason for including it in this. You know, the 12 records you think people should have don't have to be necessarily be the most expensive records in your collection. They can be if you want it to be, can be, but yeah, some fantastic songs on it. And technically, this is the only LP that featured all original 5 members of The Move. Great album, really is. If you haven't got this, check it out. Even if you buy a reissue of it, or even download it off Spotify or whatever, some cracking songs on here, and well worth having in your collection. And I know I am extremely honoured in one way to have an original copy in my collection. Like I said, I've been after it for years, and you know, found it earlier this year. So that is The Move, the debut album by The Move. These aren't in any particular order, so it might seem like going to 6s and then into things, but it's just the way that I've pulled them out of the racks behind me and things like that. So, the next one is, I should imagine, people of my age, you know, 21 and a bit, okay, in your 50s. If you grew up like listening to the radio stations in the early 70s, mid 70s, early 80s, and used to go to the pictures and stuff like that, you remember a film called Quadrophenia by The Who. Well, this is the album that film is based on. It's not the soundtrack to the album. This is the actual album that the film is based on. Originally released in 1973. This is actually a French pressing, in excellent condition. Again, it's one I was after for years and years and years. I did get rid of my original UK pressing many, many years ago. Always regretted it, but was lucky enough to come across this one sometime last year. Again, didn't pay a hell of a lot for it. Some classic, and I mean classic, Who songs on this album. The one I like the most, to be honest, is Dr. Jimmy. I think that's a brilliant song. Maybe not the best song on here. That's just my personal preference. But you know, long. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. So yeah, a fantastic album, and obviously this like is what the film is based on. And there's 2 Quadrophenia albums. This is the original album, and then the other one is the soundtrack to the film. Some of the songs are the same on them. Great production, great musicianship, and probably the Who at the peak, in my opinion. I don't think they ever topped this, to be honest. Fantastic album, and I bet most of you out there, if you haven't got this album, have heard of it. Right, the next one is the debut album by Small Faces. Again, a very, very underrated band, in my opinion. Great fan of the Small Faces. I wouldn't say I've always been a fan of theirs, because it's only like in the past probably 20 years I've sort of got into them. Very, very underrated band. If they'd have stopped together, they probably could have been as big as the Rolling Stones in the 1970s. That's in my personal opinion. 3 of the 4 members have now passed away. This is like I say, the original UK debut album that came out on Decca, and it's mono, and it's as rare as rocking horse shit, to be honest. Pardon my language, but to get a decent copy of this for less than £100, you've done very, very, very well. Basically, because it wasn't a big seller. I don't think it was a big seller when it came out. On this, though, they're more like a covers band. And even Kenny Lynch writes, the comedian Kenny Lynch writes or co-writes a couple of songs. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 songs out of the 12 that are written by the Small Faces or co-written by the Small Faces, and the other 6 are all cover versions or songs that were written for him, i.e. Kenny Lynch. Shalalalali was written by Kenny Lynch or co-written by Kenny Lynch. You better believe it, again, co-written by Kenny Lynch. What was the other ones? I think there's 3 on there, aren't there? Oh, Sorry She's Mine, written by Kenny Lynch. So it's not sort of the Small Faces of Vitchku Park and stuff like that. This is more the Small Faces as a proper rhythm and blues or mod band. Fantastic album, by the way. Again, every track on here is amazing. Definitely 10 out of 10, in my opinion. Which may not be the same as yours. The next album is again one of those that I've been after for years and years and years, and last year I did actually manage to get it. Although this is a reissue. You can have reissues in it as well if you're playing the same. But I do think this is probably, it's one of my favourite albums to have in my collection, but I think it is probably one of the best albums this band ever made, if not the best album. And it's Something Else by the Kinks. Got some classic songs on here. You've got Death of a Clown and things like that. Waterloo Sunset, David Watts. You know, it's a bit of a concept album in one way, but then again, it's not. Originally released in 1967. Again, to get an original one of these, you're talking a hell of a lot of money. And to get one that's playable or in really, really nice condition, you know, virtually impossible. This is 180-gram reissue. Sound quality on this is absolutely amazing. Again, every song on here is brilliant. And again, I would give it a 10 out of 10. Even though it is a reissue, I would still give it a 10 out of 10. Fantastic album. Probably, I'm in 2 minds whether it's this or the Village Green Preservation Society. I'm always like that as to which is the best Kinks album. They're both fantastic. And in all honesty, time of release, they're both classed as flops, sort of. They've both got cult followings now, and you know, the time sort of has come, and they are now, you know, regarded in the esteem that they should have been when they were originally released in 1967. So that is Something Else by the Kinks. Cracking album. That is one of those that you put on and you listen and track one side one, and apart from getting up to change the record over, you will listen to every track. You won't like skip any track on that. Well, if you do, I'd be very, very surprised, put like that. It's one of those albums that you can play all the way through. Fantastic. Really is a great album. The next one, this might be a bit of a surprise to some people. The Piper at the Gates of Dawn by Pink Floyd. This is not an original. It is a 1970 repressing on a one box Columbia EMI label, I think. Sorry, two box. And again, although it's a reissue, it's still very, very hard to get on the Columbia label. It has been reissued many, many times. Of course, this is the album that featured the late, great Syd Barrett. Basically, he wrote or co-wrote all the songs. Musical genius. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a sad story about Syd Barrett. Basically, like I say, he was a genius. And without Syd Barrett, there would never, ever been a Pink Floyd. And they wouldn't have gone on to do, you know, Wish You Were Here and things like that, Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, Wish You Were Here was basically all about Syd Barrett, which is a bit strange, really. And apparently, he did turn up to one of the recording sessions, and they actually didn't know who he was because he'd shaved all his hair off and he'd put on quite a bit of weight, as we do. Yeah, fantastic album. Not necessarily got any hits on it as such. I think when this was released, I think they'd had 2 hits: See Emily Play and Arnold Lane, I think. The best track for me on this, actually, is probably the most comical out the lot, which is called Bike. I've got a bike, you can ride it if you like. I will put some on there. I think in America, when you got this, you had it in a slightly different running order, and I think it did include See Emily Play on yours, but I'm not 100% sure. And it was produced by Norman Smith, who was originally an assistant producer to George Martin. Great album. Again, 10 out of 10. Not to everybody's liking, I will admit. It is very, very psychedelic album. To be honest, this is one of those records where if you've got an understanding partner and you want to listen to this in the best possible way, is to put some headphones on, listen to it through headphones and have a drink. And then you will float downstream, as John Lennon used to say. Fantastic album, honestly, a brilliant album. And like I say, Syd Barrett is a very, very underrated person in the UK music business. He has sort of got a bit more recognition now, but at the time it was very, very sad what happened to him. Basically, he liked his looks too much, and it sort of like made him go a bit, not insane. I think the famous quote is he had one LSD trip too many and couldn't get back to normality. How true that is, I don't know. I know just before he died, somebody took some photos of him because he was living in a cottage with his mother or his sister or something, and he got a bit upset and said, you know, don't take photos of me. I'm not Syd Barrett. I'm Roger, because his real name was Roger, wasn't it? But yeah, you know, I don't think they ever fell out. Sid and the other members of Pink Floyd. I know that they did make sure he got his royalty checks and, you know, things like that. But I think he gave most of them away. But yeah, so another sad story. Check it out on YouTube or buy a book or, you know, Google it. Very, very clever man in a lot of ways, Syd Barrett was. Just a shame what happened to him. But hey, it's, you know, the music business has basically ruined a lot of people, haven't they? Ruined them all. You know, they've got the fame and they don't know what to do with it. I don't think that was the case with Syd. I think it was one of those that was just easily led, where you know, put it in terms that I could understand. If he's in a pub and he's about to go home, somebody says, "Oh, come on, let's have a drink," he'd have it, you know, things like that. And then obviously, once you started getting a bit of money, it wasn't drink, it would be drugs. So like instead of having, oh, just try one of these, and they'd probably say, oh yeah, go on then. You know, I don't know. I'm just imagining that's probably what he was like. Doesn't matter. He was a fantastic vocalist, very, very good guitar player in his own right as well, and a brilliant songwriter. The next one is the Sex Pistols. Never mind the bollocks. Fantastic debut album again. See, we've done quite a few debut albums. In retrospect, now this does look a bit like a greatest hits album, because the songs on here are that well known now. Most people will think most of these were released as singles, where they weren't. Anarchy in the UK was a single, Pretty Vacant was a single, and God Save the Queen was a single, and Holidays in the Sun was a single. So you got 4 off here that were actual singles. Submission was a one-sided promo single, but then you've got things like New York, Bodies, Problems, 17, No Feelings, Liar. Again, fantastic debut album. Technically the only proper album the Sex Pistols ever recorded, although without Johnny Rotten, or Don Larden as he likes to now be called, they did record some songs for the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, but it was never really up to the standard of this album. It always makes me wonder what they could have gone on to do if they'd have stayed together. But it's what it is. If they'd have stayed together, perhaps we wouldn't be talking about them 40, nearly 50 years on now, isn't it? You know, it was a fantastic album when it was released. It's still a fantastic album now, and I would say it is probably in the top 10 of debut albums by anybody. Again, that is just my opinion. You might not agree. So yeah, fantastic. 10 out of 10. Not a bad track on it, really. The one most people don't like now is Bodies because of what it's about. But at the time, it was good. But if you don't listen to lyrics and you just listen to the music of Bodies, it's a very, very high energy song, if that makes sense. Sid Vicious does actually play on this. Not on every track, he's on a couple of tracks, but I think his bass was that bad that it's mixed down, you know, in the mix, they lowered it down. Like I say, fantastic album. This one's actually on white vinyl as well. So yeah, never mind the bollocks. I think this should be in most people's record collections of my age, which, like I say, is 21 plus quite a bit now. Staying with the punk sort of theme, again, another debut album. Didn't realise how many debut albums I've pulled out of this. Is Adam and the Ants, Dirt Wears White Socks. Now, if you live in America and places like that, you probably might have heard of Adam Ant, but not necessarily Adam and the Ants. They started off as a punk band, although Adam Ant was originally a bass player in a band called Bazooka Joe, I think it was. It were like a pub rock sort of band, not punk rock, pub rock. So this was their debut album from 1979, and it was on an independent label called Do It Records, and it was the first #1 album in the independent album charts, I think, if I've got that right. Again, fantastic album. You've got Car Trouble, parts 1 and 2, Digital Tenderness, 9 Plan Failed, The Day I Met God, Table Talk. Side 2 got Cleopatra, Catholic Day, Never Trust a Man with Egg on His Face. Now, they played that, Adam and the Ants played that on their Prince Charming review tour. Animal and Men, Family of Noise, and The Idea. They also did a version of Car Trouble on that, I think. Adam Ant actually got sacked from Adam and the Ants, believe it or not, from this version. the long story involving Malcolm McLaren, and basically he signed the Ants to a record deal without Adam. They went on to become a band called Bow Wow Wow, and then Adam did Adam and Ants Mark II, which became very, very famous with Marco and people like that in it. He did Kings of the Wild Frontier, Prince Charming, and then obviously went on to his solo career. This one is actually quite rare because the later copies have a different label. This is the original on the Do It label. Again, worth quite a few pounds, to be honest. The later copies, when I say later copies, it's only like a couple of months later came with a what they call a chair label. So it's like somebody sat on a chair on either side. Fantastic album, great musicianship. Probably the most punk sounding album Adam ever made. I shouldn't really say this, but song for song, I think this is a better album than Kings of the Wild Frontier. Although Kings of the Wild Frontier kick-started Adam's career into becoming the pop star in the early 1980s. Hello, I've got a few people commenting now. What have we got? Derek Roberts, once again, I'm settled. I'll go back to buying records again. Yeah, you know something? I've only been collecting records seriously again for around 10 years. So all these records that you see behind me, I've collected the majority of them in 10 years. They're not all mega rare, you know. Some only cost a few pounds, some have cost me a few £100. Doesn't matter how big your record collection is. When I first got with Susie Sue, I didn't have any records. But I think she got fed up with me keep saying on about how much I missed having a record collection, because I did used to have quite a large record collection. I've said this before, so I will make it brief, but I had to get rid of it. I'm not going to say why, but I did have to get rid of it. And then I was always saying how much I missed not having records. And then for my birthday, she bought me a really, really cheap record player. And I mean really cheap. And I think it was 3 or 4 records. And then all this started again. You know, I got hooked straight away. Yeah, if you're moving house, it is hard. I do understand. I'm dreading if ever I have to move, because I've got best part of, must be getting on for 6,000 LPs now. That is all manner of records. It's not just Beatles. And, you know, I've got a few classical records. I've got a few opera records that I listen to occasionally, even a few country and western records. I've got things like Frank Sinatra and things like that as well, and even ABBA. Yeah, somebody's put, well, don't move. I'm not planning to move. So that's the majority of them. I think we've got we've got 3 more. But then, like I say at the end, I'm going to tell you a guilty pleasure, which people probably wouldn't think was in my record collection. And it's from 1979, and it's One Step Beyond by Madness, but it is an original. Cracking songs on here. You've got One Step Beyond, My Girl, Night Boat to Car, Believe Me, Land of Hope and Glory, The Prince, Tarzan's Nuts, Side 2, In the Middle of the Night, Bed and Breakfast Man, There's a Man I Know, at least I used to years ago, Razor Blade Alley, Swan Lake, and it is Swan Lake, Rockin' in A B, Mummy's Boy, and Chipmunks Are Go. So this was the first album by Madness. Although they had their debut single was on Two Tone, by the time this came out, they'd moved to Stiff Records in the UK. I don't know what label there was on in America. I know later they did their own label called Czar Jazz. And believe it or not, this and the next album were actually released on the same day. Cracking album again. People of a certain age, i.e. old farts like me, will probably love Madness. Again, this is one of them records where you're going to put it on and you'll be all the way through it. Not a bad track on it, honestly. There's not a bad track on it, in my opinion. Unfortunately, people, you know, this has got vitamin stuff on it, but it does play okay. To be honest, I must look out for better copy. But yeah, a fantastic debut album by Madness. And like I say, this next album was released on the same day. And again, it's a debut album by the Specials. The late, great Terry Hall. Although, to be fair, Jerry Dammers was the founder of Two Tone Records. Without him, there wouldn't have been Specials or any of that ska revival. Fantastic album. This album was actually produced by Elvis Costello. And you've got some fantastic songs on this. A Message to You, Do the Dog, It's Up to You, Nightclub, Doesn't Make It All Right, Concrete Jungle, Too Hot, Monkey Man, Dawning of a New Era, Blank Expression, Where Did You Get That Blank Expression on Your Face? Ding, 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 ding. Stupid Marriage, Too Much Too Young, the original version, not the live version, Little Bitch, and You're Wondering Now. Again, not a bad song on this. David Von Black. Do you have the Velvet Underground and Nico? No, unfortunately, I don't. That is another one of them records that I've always been after, but every time I see it, it is silly money. But you know, it is one that is on like my wants list. Derek Roberts, sorry mate. Yes, if you've got to go, you've got to go. Thank you for all your comments, and I hope you've enjoyed this little live stream. And like I'm saying, if you're watching this and leaving comments, and you fancy doing a version of this yourself, it's not going to be a tag or anything. Don't get me wrong. You just think what your 12 would be out of your collection. Like I say, they don't have to be worth a lot. They don't have to be first pressings if you don't want to be first pressings. You can have compilation albums in it. So that is number 11, isn't it? So remember, it's 12 records you think people should have in the collection. But like I said, depending on where you live and your age, what I think should be in my collection is not going to be what you think is in yours, is it? Fantastic album. Again, 10 out of 10. Can't fault it. Specials technically had a very, very short career. It was basically this and then more Specials, and then they split up, didn't they? Although they did, like, there was certain members that stayed together and things like that. Fantastic album. I have got the American version of this, which is slightly different because in the American version, that is the front cover and that is the back cover. Last but not least, after my 12, this is a compilation album. Basically because I love this bloke, Mark Bolan. Him and David Bowie kicked off the glam rock sort of style in the UK. Unfortunately, Mark Bolan died in 1977. So again, his career wasn't that long. Well, you say it wasn't that long. It was, because it went from 1965, I think he made his first record, up to 1977. Died in a car crash, believe it or not, in very, very strange circumstances. He was the passenger, and his girlfriend at the time, Gloria Jones, of she did a version of Tainted Love, was actually his girlfriend at the time, and she survived. Not a mark on her, I don't think, but it killed Mark Bolan outright. Very, very sad. I've got the Pretenders' first two albums, and I was going to put one of them in here. So yeah, like I say, just trying to do 12 is actually quite hard, especially when you've got a large record collection like me. But yeah, this is just called Best of the 20th Century Boy, and it's basically his hits. So you've got The Groover, Jeepster, Dreamy Lady, Get It On, I Love to Boogie, 1 Inch Rock and Sunken Rags. Side 2, Telegram Sam, Deborah, Laser Love, Summertime Blues, the old Eddie Cochran song. Light of Love, New York City, Soul of My Suit. Side 3, 20th Century Boy, By the Light of the Magical Moon, Tricon, Ride a White Swan, Zip Gun Boogie, Teenage Dream and Hot Love. Side 4 is Children of the Revolution, King of the Rumbling Spires, London Boys, Jitterbug Love, Metal Guru, Solid Gold, Easy Action, and Cosmic Dancers. That is all the tracks on this album. Of course, if you live in America, I think T-Rex's biggest hit was Get It On, but it was retitled as Bang a Gong in America, I think. He had lots of hits in the UK. Around 1974-75, his sort of like star started to wane a little bit. But then when punk rock started, he had a TV show on in the UK, and he actually used to promote all the punk bands, Generation X, The Damned and everything. The Damned even went on tour with T-Rex, believe it or not. So yeah, great bloke, very, very sadly missed. And like I say, fantastic guitarist, brilliant frontman. Honestly, really, really brilliant frontman. If you don't know, or you've never heard of Mark Bolan and T-Rex, depending on where you live, check out some of his videos on YouTube. He was very, very flamboyant in a lot of ways, and I mean that in a nice way. He was an ideal frontman, very, very talented guitarist as well. I think he taught himself to play guitar, from what I heard. And he used to live, when he was a teenager, and I didn't know this till recently, he actually lived with an actor called James Bolam, who used to be in a TV series called The Likely Lads, and then he did New Tricks and things like that. And that's why he changed his name from Mark Field to Mark Bolan. But then I think they fell out, but I don't know. I have got David Combell. I have got Bat Out of Hell again. That was one I was going to put in. And I've got Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run. But like I say, narrowing it down to 12 when you've got as many records as I have is actually quite hard. I hope you all saw that then, because I don't know if that throws up. Like I say, just trying to pick 12 records. Yeah, just trying to pick 12 records is very, very hard. And now for my guilty pleasure. As you know, I love the Beatles. You've seen what other sort of music I like. This might surprise a lot of people, but my guilty pleasure is a band called, well, they're very, very big in the 1970s in the UK. Excuse me. I'm not sure if you live in America or France or anywhere else in the world, you might not know this band. They were a bit of a rock and roll revival band, stroke glam rock band, and they're called Shawaddy. And one of the members of Shawaddy used to own a club quite near to where I used to live, and it was called Middle of Effing Nowhere. That's what the club was called, and they used to have a lot of bikers and stuff go there. I can't remember who it was who run it, but yeah, they were very, very big. And I've chose this album to show you because although this is greatest hits, so you've got Hey Rock and Roll, you've got Rock and Roll Lady, Sweet Music, Chain Gang, King of Jive, then you've got 3 Steps to Heaven, Heartbeat, Johnny Remember Me, Hey Mr. Christmas, and Under the Moon of Love. Now, believe it or not, when I was about 10, maybe 11, one of the first singles I ever went out and bought with my own money was Under the Moon of Love by Shawaddy. Let's go for a little walk, ba-da-ba-dum, under the moon of love. Let's say down and talk under the moon of love. Wanna tell you that I love you, and I want you to be my girl. And darling, let's walk, let's talk under the moon of love. So that is my guilty pleasure. Don't play it that often, to be honest, nowadays. But yes, so that's 13 records. So it's 12 records that I think people of my age that live in the UK will probably have some of those, probably not all of them. If you live in America, your 12 would be completely different, as I'm looking at some of these things on here. That one I've never heard of. Well, Puncture thing, X Wild Gift in Los Angeles. I've never heard of those albums. I have got the Thin Lizzy one. And like I say, the Velvet Underground with Nico is one that is on my watch list. So yeah, if you've watched this video and you've managed to stay all the way to the end, well done. You know, thank you very much. If you've liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. A lot of you have left some comments, which I'm going through now reading. If you're not subscribed, please think about subscribing because it is free. And if you want to have a go at making a video like this yourself, please do. Just mention me in it. Like I said, I'm not trying to start a vinyl tag or whatever it is, and it's not a competition or anything. But like David, I might say your name wrong on here. Camblat, Comblate, right? You've left quite a few comments on here, and you know what would be in your 12 then. You know, that's all I'll say. I think you've agreed with some of mine and stuff like that, but you know, I've been collecting records for over 40 years and trying to narrow it down to 12. Originally, I was going to do 5, and then it went to 10, and then I thought, well, I'll do 12. And I could have done 20, I could have done 30, but I would have still missed something out that somebody out there would have said, well, you know, you've got to. I haven't said it's an essential to be in your collection. I'm just saying there's just things I think people of my age will probably have some of these in their collection. The one they probably won't have is this one, Shiwaddywaddy's Greatest Hits. But to be honest, in its own little right, that is a cracking little album. And if you've had a crap day at work and you come home and you put this on it, I guarantee it'll put a smile on your face. So that's going to be it, folks, unfortunately. I'm sorry it's gone on so long. I really, really am sorry it's gone on so long. I thought 20-minute video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I say, if you have been commenting, thank you very much. If you're watching this later when it's not live and you want to leave a comment, please do. You know, if you want to play this at home, please play it at home. It is harder than you think. Obviously, if you haven't got 12 records, and it's not going to be hard, is it? But you know, what? No bass Rollers. That was another one. I was going to put a bass Rollers one in as well. Oh my god! You see what I mean? It could be endless. Trying to just pick 12. You know, I could have put ELO in it. I could have put Status Quo in it. Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Motorhead. You know, there's quite a few that I've missed out that I have got in my collection. You know, so as always, I'm going to love you and leave you now. So thank you to everybody that supported me, leaving comments, subscribing, and you know, just watching my videos. If you're not subscribed, please think about subscribing. Hello, nice to see you, mate. Hope you're doing well. I wonder how many of these records you've got. You know, and if you're subscribed, just remember to hit the notification button as well. So until the next time, Beatle Dave's going to say thank you. You know, without you lot, there wouldn't be a channel. You are the beat in Beatle Dave. So whatever you're doing, stay safe. Stay tuned because there might be a few more videos over the next few days. I hope this one's come out all right. It's a bit hard because I've done it on my laptop. I usually do them on my phone. And I do think it's froze a couple of times. So until the next time, I'm Beatle Dave. Loves you all. Ta-ra for now, my ducks.